Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the ZFS episode number 24. Last episode, we had Robert from Infonomics breaking down the economy. We focused a lot around interest rates and the housing market, specifically down to the data as to why things aren't getting better. Today, I have somebody that if you don't know his name, you probably know his face and that beautiful painting behind him if you scroll TikTok at all. As someone who advocates not just for housing, because he's in real estate and has been before we get into his soap opera days. He's a real estate guy. But he's been focusing on the cost of living difference decade by decade, and I think it's fitting to start with where we're at today. So I want to read off some numbers for us, Fred, and then let's get into the conversation. Unemployment, the U3, recently came out at 4.3%, up 0.1%. The first-time job loss claims came out this morning, and it was up 237K to 263K, and this is the highest number we've seen since April of 2021. Young worker unemployment rate under 27 years old is 7.4%. Those without degrees, it's 10.4%. Underemployment for college grads, 52%. That's right, 52% underemployment, defined as people who are doing jobs that they are qualified to make more money doing something better, but they can't find that job. Most specifically, 57.9% underemployment for medical techs and 67.2% underemployment for those with criminal justice degrees. A starter home, according to the National Association of Realtors, is now $369,000. The first-time home buyer median income looking to buy that starter home on medians making $68,559, while the qualifying income required to buy that very starter home is $106,000. 30-year-olds with a home who are also married in 1990 was 49.4%. Today it is 12.1%. Electric's up 68% since 2020. Healthcare 21.2%. Housing up 57%. Food at home 23.6%. And the median used car payment now at $514, according to Experian, is up 48.2%. Median child care bill for one child is now $1,236 nationwide. And as we learned on the last episode with Robert, the annual interest, Freddie, I don't know if you know this one, the annual interest now paid on a home if you were to get a mortgage today, if you were to buy that same home 5 years ago, you'd be paying $9,602 in interest every year on that mortgage. Today, if you got that same home with the same mortgage, it's $24,687 going only to interest, not your equity, and feeding bankers more money. Freddie, how you doing, brother?
After those statistics, not as good, man. What the hell? There's nothing good in that.
There's not a lot of good in that. We are going to offer some good. I do want to focus conversation around solutions today. I don't want people to walk away with tears in their eyes thinking there's only darkness ahead. But there are definitely headwinds. The dollar, the deficit. What are you most focused on right now is one of the biggest problems facing specifically the under 30-year-old looking at today's housing market and just getting by in America?
I mean, I think it's two things. I think the rent and housing cost is frustrating because even when you look at, interestingly enough, you wouldn't think that this is true, but the actual wages in the past 50 years has increased with inflation, not as much as we'd like it. But when you have rent, instead of taking up 17% of your income, taking up to 40%, that's where you kind of get that pay cut. But I think the thing that I'm starting to move to, I just want to be careful with it because it's not really my expertise, but I think it's now gotten into past the data and into the mental health of the youth that if you look at even those statistics, they're very true. And 2.5 years ago, I was weary about the things I was seeing because I didn't want to feel like I'm letting people down. But I think everyone knows it now, and we need to address the emotional impact that all of these facts are having. Because if you don't feel you have hope for the future, it's going to bleed into every aspect of your life.
Between antidepressants and alcohol consumption as well as mental health, the combination creates this stat apparently called depths of despair. And apparently those numbers are ranking right up with 1929. You're not off base when it comes to mental health. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think you need hope for the future. I've always said progression equals happiness, and I think of that in my own life, where when I was in my 20s, which unfortunately a lot of people under 30 never even got a good decade of adulthood. At least I know you're younger than me, but I'm 37. I had a decade.
Good decade and a half, maybe even.
Yeah. I mean, even when I was growing up as a kid in the 90s, it was dope as fuck, you know, even in the early 2000s. But being like graduating high school in 2006 and getting 2006 to 2020, I have a different perspective, and many older millennials do too, of I feel like we used to be motivated out of hope, and now I'm still motivated, but it's slightly, my motivation almost comes out of fear now, where I'm not motivated because I'm like, ooh, I have hope for these great things. I'm like, I have to stay motivated so that the avalanche of the middle class like monster doesn't get me. Like, what a different
almost like it's gone from I want to be a part of a solution for my life to now I need to make enough money so I'm not, a part of the problem. Like you're running from a monster almost, kind of. It's like a different motivation.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing that in my own life, and then I look at the income that my wife and I have, where I know that we're above the average family, and we don't have student debt, and we don't have children, and I feel not pressure that I'm going to be evicted or I can't go to the grocery store or a date night. We're blessed in those instances, but to really look at the income and think like what that would have been just 10 years ago, even when I lived in Los Angeles, it's just significantly more, and you can start making more progress. When you pay off your debt, you get this dopamine hit. You feel you're making progress. You have hope for the future. When you buy a house, you have hope for the future. When you can travel and meet new friends and build new relationships, hope for the future. Now it just feels like people are like, we're just like, let's just get up and work every day. And there are
income, just to put to your stat, income is up 8.5% to 9.5% according to some sources, while in the last 5 years, home prices have gone up 57%.
Yes. So it's been actually, I mean, the past 5 years, it's been, crazy. But I mean, we look back to even 1980, like you just see it start to just shift up with the cost of living and the productivity. I just did this video the other day where I was looking at productivity, and you've probably seen that chart where in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, productivity and wages went hand in hand. And then it started to split in the 80s when the wealth started to be hoarded by the corporations and everything became about profits. And the wages never kept up with productivity.
Yeah, detethering from the gold, tethering over to oil, deregulating big business. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's finding that fine line for people to feel they have hope, because I'm not telling people to give up. You should do everything you possibly can, but I also just think it's, even when I hear people on TV or economists or people who have written books, and you want to be encouraging, but when I know the numbers of someone making $52,000 living in just an average city, and they have student debt and a used car that's 12 years old, and they're just like, just thinking about cutting back and putting a budget together, and really fine-tooth comb, go through what you're spending. You're probably spending more than you think. All true, but $52,000 in most cases for young people who didn't buy a house already, who don't have their debt paid, it's a struggle.
Yeah. And to your point, I think a lot of people realize, okay, I could eat out less. I could have one or two less subscriptions. I could get by without the unlimited data plan. But is getting rid of those things, this kind of goes to the avocado toast debate, is getting rid of those things actually going to move the ball for me? Like if I actually sacrifice, live the minimal lifestyle, cut absolutely everything, will I be making enough to eventually get by? I can't get by the point that you just said earlier. It's like, instead of running towards something, which is a motivation, like you're running toward a finish line, it's now like people feel like they're running from the killer in the park. It's a different motivation. Like if I slow down, I'm going to die. It used to be, if I'm going to slow down, I could make $40K and get by, watch football every night, play video games with my boys, not really give a shit, and be okay.
Yeah.
But now you can't do that.
Dude, that's a great analogy. You're right, because you're running in the same direction, but before you were running towards something exciting. Now you're running from something where you can't take a break because you'll be eaten.
Why can't someone under the age of 35 have a Saturday where they're able to grab a six-pack and go on Discord with their boys and play Skyfall's new update for the Voyager mode, and not worry about their electric bill that's coming up for $400? Yep. Or go to the grocery store next and think, man, how am I going to get that paid? Or putting utilities on credit cards. Like it's a weird world we're in right now, where it seems you're being forced into, and you hear this all the time. Well, start a business. It's about the grind. Uber, DoorDash. It seems like gaslighting, and you brought it up, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you got 7 years my senior. You're an old man. What was the turning point from you could get by minimally and still live a good American lifestyle, to now, if you don't have dual income, if you don't have no kids, if you don't have something that's getting you more than 100K, it almost feels like the American lifestyle is just not sustainable. When was that shift? Like, could you point to it on a map, on a timeline?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because I think age plays a huge role. I think we're comparing a 25-year-old today to when I was 25, and it wasn't the same. When I was 25 years old, which was 12 years ago, there wasn't, like, I didn't go to school, but even if I did, the expense was cheaper. Mm-hmm. When I was driving like a nice used BMW when I first started making a little money. The payment was $333.
Dude, same deal. I drove a Camaro. It was only 16 grand. It wasn't crazy, but I could have gotten an 8 grand car, 6 grand car.
Yeah, like even my first car in 2004 was $2,000. It was only 8 years old and had 50,000 miles on it. Yeah. Like that was so that, I think that's the disconnect, is that we're trying to compare. If you haven't ran the numbers or looked at it, you can see a 25-year-old and go, well, I was doing fine then. But it's like all different generations. When you were 25, there was just less bills. And I always thought, when I chased my dreams, speaking of wanting to start a business, and I encourage people to try and make something of yourself. But when I was chasing my dreams, I wanted it so bad, but the failure just meant I was going to serve tables and still live a dope life with my friends and have the money to pay my bills. So like the failure was just, this sucks, I have to serve longer.
Absolutely.
But now it's like even my wife and I, we have a below average house. I would have to serve full time just to cover my mortgage. Like before serving full time, you could cover your whole life. So I just think over time, when you add in the student loans, you add in the rent cost, and then we even have things like, I know people want to talk shit that we have $1,500 cell phones. They're really only $30 a month, interest free. I think I have
and
Verizon,
a requirement for the American work life
and internet. Like, these are things in the 80s that we didn't have extra things that were necessary. You know, electric, heat, internet, cell phone, and then our car insurance is much different. That's higher. So it's all these little things add up together. And all this is a math problem. Just to touch on one more thing that you mentioned, when people say too, like cutting it out of your bills or the avocado toast, it's just a simple math problem. If you look through all your bills and you say, okay, let me cut out this $500 a month of me going out to eat, stopping at Starbucks, like Netflix, like all this stuff that you don't need to live, but it's $500, but you've got a $16,000 car, $60,000 of student loans. You're like, okay, if I put this $500 towards my $76,000 of debt every month, that's still going to take me 12 years,
right,
to get back to zero.
Right.
So you're like, okay, well, let me raise my income and do a side hustle and make $1,500. Take all of that plus the $500. It'll cut it down to 5 years. But 5 years of sacrifice, not knowing if there's going to be a friend's wedding, a funeral, the car breaking down. That's like when I run these math problems of people's bills sometimes, when I look through comments or even friends of mine, it's like the only reason my wife and I got out of debt is because we happened to have a skill set that allowed us to be in sales, and we weren't just making $3,000 a month. We had months of like 30, 40 grand when you sell a few houses or TikTok or things like that, where we moved through our couple $100,000 of debt rather quickly. But if I was just going to go get a construction job, which I thought about at one point, was looking at jobs, when I ran the math of my take home, I go, babe, we're fucked. Like, we'll never pay this off with me taking home $3,300. It's impossible. So
people don't want to bring it to math. People want to bring it to bootstraps. They want to talk about working hard. Why is that? All right. Why is that? Because I got my first house when I got back from deployment. And I'll tell you what, when I got back from deployment, I spent that entire, because I got back February 2013. When I got back, I didn't get another job until September of 2013. I took 7 months off and just dicked around. I went and got a little random job, and then I ended up circulating into, okay, maybe I'll do this law enforcement thing, and I did the prison. Like, I wasn't grinding. 18 to 24, I was doing nothing. And if you do that today, if you spend your 18 to 24 years of life doing nothing today, you're going to approach 25 behind like 3 titanium walls to get to the American dream. You know, I was able to buck up and figure it out and take the financial mistakes we made. We were $86,000 in debt at a negative $100,000 net worth. And like you, through real estate and through grinding, was able to push through it. But I made mistakes. I didn't do it perfectly, especially from the beginning. I don't do it perfectly today. And if you ran the perfect playbook, it seems, from out of college or from out of a trade school or wherever you do, you're just not going to get the same results. So why is that ignored? Why is the math ignored so much, Freddie? Why do so many boomers just say, work harder?
Because I think it's I mean, I'd like to think it's coming out of good faith. I think they are looking at their lives and saying, this is what we did.
Yeah.
We sacrificed for 6 months, 18 months, got a 20% down payment for a house, was able to do that. And I just think if you don't look at the numbers and put yourself in the shoes of kids today, because for 50 years, that was always the truth. Even for an older millennial. Like if I screwed up and woke up at 25, I got really screwed because I was in a different scenario that I racked up so much debt. But most people, if you messed up as like a Gen Xer and you woke up at 30 and said, oh man, I didn't know anything about finance, I gotta get my shit together, you might have 30 grand of debt. And it's like, that's manageable back then. But to wake up with a college debt, car debt, credit card debt, and not the job that can pay off that student loan, that mistake stays with you much longer. And also, because I always try to like put myself in their shoes too, I understand the entrepreneurs and some of the boomer generation that's just like, well, what's the complaining getting you? Like, why even spend time complaining, you know? But I think we're at a place that the people who are complaining are on their last straw. If there was a 37-year-old, if I was living in my parents' basement, not doing the dishes, not mowing the lawn, not taking out the trash, not looking for a job, smoking weed all day, and was on my TikTok going, I need free shit, then give me some tough love, Zach, if I'm ever that guy. But when you have somebody who just got off a 50-hour work week who's in their car that's 10 years old and falling apart and they're crying because they're like, my check just hit and I got $13 to last me for 2 weeks, the system's broken. The complaining, I think, is necessary. I like to call it like, really, it's protesting at this point.
Yeah, calling it out more than complaining. It's like if you're going to college and you call out the professor because there's asbestos and mold in the ceiling and you can see it. You're like, I don't want to be in here. I'm going to get sick. This isn't going to do me any good. And then people from outside the class say, no, go back in there and learn like I did. Well, yeah, there wasn't black mold everywhere. when I feel like this is a toxic environment. I feel like I'm being poisoned, and I think a lot of people believe that, and I think rightfully so mathematically, that if they keep on the same path that they're keeping on, not only is it not sustainable, but like you said, they're already looking the numbers in the face. Like, how am I going to get by with such little money when everything is so much more expensive?
And you have to be, you almost have to be extraordinary to live an ordinary life now.
Say that again, preacher.
You have to be extraordinary to live an ordinary life.
Amen.
Where even
Double
just
amen.
10 years ago, not even thinking about the boomer generation or Gen X, like even like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you could be ordinary and live an ordinary life. And what I mean by ordinary is the fact that you could just go back when there were newspapers or go online or go down the street and just go get a job. Mm-hmm. And that job could get you back on your feet. That makes the average salary. Like right now, when I was looking like a couple years ago for a job, everything that I was interested in doing was paying anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 if I were to have gone and got that job. And it's just like, that used to be enough that I could have supported my wife, who could have decided that we want to have a kid, quit her job, stay home, and that $60,000 I could have bought a home and took care of a family on by going down the street with no training and just getting a job and working for $50,000, where now you got to put in that 6 years of college, invest tens of thousands, start a business, become a content creator, get good at sales. And that's not easy. We know that. Being in sales, there's only 1%, 2%, 3% of people that are ever going to continue for decades making multiple six figures or millions of dollars. The odds are against you, which is what makes it special.
Same with running a business.
Yeah. I mean, most of them fail, and that's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
But it goes back to not everyone should be forced in that direction.
Because they don't have the personality for it either. Like, there's so many people that are like, I don't want to, like, they probably look at us and go, I'm not going to talk in a microphone on the internet. Are you nuts?
Yeah. Those
Like,
little vain dummies thinking their voice matters. Absolutely. No, I get
Yeah.
it. Our voice is nothing in comparison to the whole echo chamber of voices. But at the end of the day, this is where we mesh in, and it's unfair for just because we meshed into this and we're doing fine or we were born at the right time to give that same checklist of this is what you got to do to be successful to the next generation. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, where if like right now, I mean, what pays? Like, there's some high level jobs, there's sales, there's entrepreneurship, business ownership, content creation, but all of that, you have to be drawn through your DNA, personality, money motivation, impact motivation. It's a specific type of person, and not everybody should have to be in one of those 5 fields. Like, you should just be able to go, I love teaching, I love being X, Y, and Z, and you're contributing to the community. And that's why I don't like when people punch down. Like, this new thing I'm seeing on comments are people, when people are complaining, they're like, sounds like a skill issue. I'm like, fuck you. What do you mean it's a skill issue? All of us are skilled and we all participate. Everyone's job is necessary for the world to go round, and we're just advocating for wages to be higher. That's what this boils down to.
I think it was, and I recently found out, I can't say the word because actually, I don't know if you know this, YouTube and Google have this new AI that is scanning content that goes on, because of course there's just so many millions and millions of pieces of content that hit the internet. It's like, how do you measure and monitor everything that's going to be harmful or misinformation? We already know they don't. And this new algorithm is putting people on YouTube into this thing called restricted mode without their say so. It's just going into restricted mode. And so I checked my account because I saw someone else post about it. And so I made a new account, brand new account, fake account. I went into settings, I turned on restricted mode, and I came back to the podcast, and 8 of our shows weren't visible. They just weren't there. They're just gone. Thumbnail not clickable, title not there. So when we get types of information, and I'm leading to a bigger question.
Yeah.
Right. When we get into the weeds about what people are passionate about today, you can talk about the list. You could talk about the Middle Eastern country that starts with I. You could talk about the SIDE that's going on. And a lot of that stuff is going to get pushed down. A lot of it is labeled misinformation. And I think a lot of people get even more frustrated with the system when their voices are being pushed back on issues they think are big, this being another one. Now, other information that recently came out was, of course, the job report. And the job report saying we actually lost about 911,000 jobs that we thought we had created through 2024. And to the unemployment side, I want to switch gears real quick. To the unemployment side, a lot of people view the job market isn't being reflected in our unemployment numbers in our U3. And to put some backing to that, not only are we getting numbers now that kind of clarifying how people have felt, but a lot of people are thinking, okay, you're late to the party. We've been yelling about this. We've been screaming about this. And now, just now, you're doing something. And the craziest part is it's still not reflected in U3 because they don't count anybody who loses a job and then goes and DoorDashes once or picks up one Uber or sells one thing on Etsy. They're all of a sudden not unemployed. If they've been unemployed for 4 weeks and put in application after application after application and then basically quit, they just fall into non-participation and not unemployed. And that non-participation rate's been dropping. So with people all around trying to apply for jobs, I saw a PR rep the other day, human resource rep, HR, who said they received for a marketing position 500 applications that had made it through their clearing system, 500 applications that had the credentials for the job. And so she had to deny 499 people for a job that she even admitted they were underpaying for. And so we have a lot of people who need jobs, and then we have employers who aren't willing to pay, but those same employers who are unwilling to pay are getting applications. So why would they pay more? It seems like we're kind of in a doom loop and people are screaming, but nothing's happening. And when subjects like this are brought up, whether it's about housing, whether it's about all the other things that were mentioned, it gets blackballed, it gets pushed away, it gets labeled as complaining, conspiracy. Are we walking through a time where that's changing? Is the next generation going to change the viewpoint on that? Or are we set for another 10 years of more of the same? I know it's a big question.
It is. I mean, it's hard to predict that, and that was very interesting. I learned I didn't know that about unemployment. How you mentioned that about the participation and things like that. So the actual unemployment number isn't a true reflection of the.
No, and that number in itself is based off of a phone survey, 60 to 80,000 phone calls being made. They pick up the phone, they say, hey, do you have a job? What about everyone else in the household? So we're already saying, is it accurate? I understand statistics-wise, if you get 80,000, you're going to have enough data to actually have a firm foundation. But you brought it up earlier with tech. My argument isn't that it's a bad system. I believe when it was created, it was a good system. It was essentially the snow day at the the snow day phone tree system. That worked, you know? We got to let everyone know school's out. We got to call Lisa. Okay, Lisa calls this person. That person calls these people's parents. It worked. And we're kind of doing the same thing with job and inflation numbers because we get the same inflation numbers from similar surveys. And those same exact surveys that may have been good in 2008 when people's home phones rang and people got excited because they were getting a phone call. Like you used to get a call or an email and you're like, hey, I got a call. Let me leave dinner real quick. Hey, Rick, how you doing? Like, people used to actually answer. Now people don't answer the phone, especially younger generations. So are we actually still getting accurate data out of those 80,000, 60,000 phone calls is my burning question. It's not that the system itself statistically doesn't make sense. It's that our whole system as a whole, the whole foundation of how we operate's changed, and we're still using the same methods. It's like a Dewey Decimal System in a world that's about to have Palantir running the world. It's like we're already having autonomous face recognition drones being implemented, and we're still using a phone tree.
Yeah.
I want it to make sense. It's all weird. I just want it to make sense.
Yeah, they're just slow as hell. Like it's interesting that it hasn't been implemented, like a better system to figure this out.
Don't say that. They'll pick it up.
But yeah, to answer your question, I think when you have when you have that many people who are applying for a job, the supply and demand is going to make it for companies where they're not going to feel the need to give more money.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is like we're going to get paid what we all tolerate, and we all still have enough that we don't want to lose it. Even people who are paycheck to paycheck, we're not going to do a huge boycott where 20 million people don't go to work.
So do you think we're
week.
going for 10 years of the same, or do you think there's going to be some kind of disruption?
I think only one of two. I don't think it can stay the same. I think it's going to – there's a couple ways to look at it. Number one is we're already experiencing us accepting, which really sucks, but we're only going to accept so much. We're accepting a decline in the quality of life. Like it's already normal now if there's a 22-year-old who's still living at home. It's like that's actually good. Like do that. Like that's now normal. Or oh, you're 38 with a roommate in a 2-bedroom 900 square foot apartment in the city. You're 38 doing that with a friend.
And you're a paralegal?
Yeah. And people are like, oh, that's normal. Oh, we don't have Thanksgivings or parties because our apartments are 700 square feet instead of a backyard, and people having kids later and buying homes. Like our quality of life is declining, and yet we're just kind of accepting it. But I think there's going to be a level where people just finally put their foot down when they have nothing else to lose. But right now it's like, well, I don't want to be evicted from my apartment even though I'm a paralegal at 38. I'm dating. We're trying to save money. Like, I'm not going to risk my job by not showing up to this boycott that maybe millions of people might or might not. But I think there will become a point where everyone has to put their foot down to do it. But I think in the meantime, people are going to move. I think you're going to see multi-generational families in houses. I think you're going to have young folks getting more creative about living together or moving to different areas, even out of the country. I'm seeing a lot. And then the big, elephant in the room, if you will, is what AI is going to look like in 10 years. I think we're so used to seeing progress pretty quickly. I don't even think we can comprehend how fast AI will move when it hits like that velocity. Like, I think it's going to be changing every week, like the political narrative. Like every day.
Have you seen the Great Plan? Again, I'm going to speak in code, knowing now what my restricted mode does. Did you see the Great Plan? GREAT? So anybody listening can look up great Trump administration. You might get a lot of weird stuff for that, but you'll find the document. The current plan for the Middle Eastern and reference area that we kind of alluded to is this new plan to get them out, and build the rubble up to within 10 years, which is why it reminded me, because you said, well, we don't even know what it's going to be. So it's right in the documentation. They're going to build an AI-powered super city. Right there in the document. First time we've seen pretty much the admission that this is where we're going. And that to me is baffling.
Yeah.
It's baffling. When I grew up thinking that TV had 4 channels. That was baffling to me. Like, it was baffling to me to think, oh my God, like you guys would just drive for hours and didn't have like a pager, cell phone, anything. You just didn't know. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
You know, growing up in adulthood, not being able to reconnect with people in high school, that's wild to me. To think in 10 years we're going to have an AI-powered super city to replace an area that we just pummeled down to the ground in the name of God is a really odd thing to even think about. It's very dystopian to think about. So on the American side, I can't help but think that certain types of similar things are going to happen. And I don't want to say this point right now. I'll probably save it to the end of where I think this goes. But I want to switch gears a little bit because we said at the beginning, solutions. Mm-hmm. There's one thing Freddie Smith could get online, could get in front of a pulpit, in front of Congress members, could get in a bill, the Smith Loft bill to Congress. What would it be? If there was just one item that you think maybe isn't going to fix everything, because I think we've had several conversations around this is a multi-layered issue, from how the laws are made, who's making them, how they're being compensated, all of these line items in the government side. But on housing specifically, is there one thing that you're like, if we did this, there'd be so much good from it more than likely?
I mean, dude, it's always such a hard answer when it's just
it's like, what do you pick? What do you pick? The building problem, the zoning problem, the first-time buyer problem. There's so many problems.
Yeah, you're asking what was the one thing just for housing?
Yeah,
or
just for housing. Getting people into shelter, getting people to own a piece of grass and dirt, I think is so powerful. It's one of the first things you do in a crime-ridden area is you start to take the homes that are dilapidated and reformat them as affordable housing to buy, because people tend to treat areas they own a little better. So I think homeownership is a huge driver in believing in America, believing in wanting it to grow, because you now own a piece of it. It's almost like owning a share of the country in a way. So what do you think could help that?
And I think now that you said that too, is if we are going to use taxpayer money because we as a country agree that home ownership is going to move the country forward, I actually think an investment, whether it's into buying down the rates, whether it's down payment assistance, and investing in helping people, meeting whatever criteria we come up with that can get people in houses, feels like a little bit more of a permanent, hopeful solution rather than just paying for someone's rent per se.
Okay. So because just to stop you there, you're talking about kind of subsidizing either down payment closing costs or paying down the rate for a first-time buyer?
If we were just thinking hypothetically, I mean, I know the numbers wouldn't. That's like saying I'd love universal health care too. I know that it's complicated in that sense, but I'm saying looking at how
we can fund another country's free healthcare, I'm sure we could figure out how to fund our own.
Yes, I've been trying to make a video on that for actually years, and I'm sure you've looked into it, and it's so fucking complicated and has so much room for corruption that it just
absolutely. Why make a system simple if you can profit so much off of it?
And that's the core of it. And I think that's what bugs me. Like when you're thinking of like one economic policy, there's like 100 we could implement that would kind of help, but we overall need to change the actual like narrative of who we are as Americans, and we need to move away from the corporations being the number one priority and shareholders back to the people. And that's why when you do look at housing, it's like, if you're going to use taxpayer money and you're going to invest, imagine getting people into houses that they can then take care of and build, and it builds equity. Because when you look at things like Social Security, we're just cutting a check, but it's not really like it's good, or welfare, you're cutting a check, but it's not giving a person something tangible. Like if we invested money into someone owning a home that will appreciate and that they can have pride in and take care of, and it'll make people, I believe, take care of their community more. But we've talked about things like making a tax on different properties. Like if you're an investment property, you pay like a 1 or 2% tax at closing and put that into a state fund. Banning private equity or huge, hedge funds or any sort of asset managers from buying up properties. Cutting regulations and all the red tape and all the bullshit about even trying to get permits in certain cities, or all of that stuff could be lessened. But, none of it seems like I don't have like a thing that like if I had one wish and could implement it, that's what's even scarier. Is I don't know if even one of those things would help. Maybe the regulation cut so that more people could build, but we've just become such a sick country that profits matter more than the well-being of people, and I just don't know what one policy is going to solve that kind of sickness.
Yeah, because what's a cheaper home build opportunity going to do for a builder other than present a better opportunity for profit? I think it's what a lot of people think. If we lower those permitting fees, infrastructure costs, even cost of labor, even cost of material, even cost of getting an ADU in, get all the costs involved in getting the sidewalk, the street lamps, the roadways. By the time you get to the home, there isn't room for the builder to cut costs, and that's not to advocate for the big builders around the planet, because even that's consolidating in the more hands of the greedy. But it's not something. I have conversations with small builders, smaller land developers that are getting eaten alive. They're getting. There's this one guy. I'll tell you a story, but I won't tell his name. He owned a small builder here in Delaware, also built in the Eastern Shore, Maryland. He just sold his company to another big builder. A mid-tier, more regional, not fully national, but another bigger builder. And why? Because they can't afford to stay afloat anymore. They can't build 30 homes and get by anymore. The scaling has to be there. You have to be building thousands of homes, multiple neighborhoods, because the only way you can compete with the incentives that these builders offer is with scale. The only way you can compete on the offers they make on the land they plan to development is through capital. And these companies are struggling. So we're seeing people that maybe even want to do good, not able to. They don't have zoning opportunity to build small homes, tiny homes, 3D homes, container homes, clubhouses. Like, build a freaking treehouse neighborhood. Like, there's nothing you can do that falls outside of the standard stick build or brick construction on a foundation of blocks, because how else are they supposed to tax us? If you have 8 different people living on the same property, you make less tax money, you make less on electric, you make less on plumbing. It doesn't make sense as a county, city, state. So you're right. I agree. There's wishful thinking and saying, okay, we need to alleviate all brand new single family zoning. We need to take the remaining 20% of our country that's still single family zoning and split it half so we can get more multifamily condos, vertical building. We need to stop building so horizontally. We need to have mixed residential, commercial. We need to lower regulatory costs, get rid of certain impact fee structures. We need to take control of municipality and county councils that are just having a free-for-all and NIMBYs getting in the way. We need to get them out of the way. All that's wishful thinking. It's how do you do it at a national scale without privatization of the industry, which most people don't want, or just outright national control over local entities. And then you get into the building side. You already mentioned it. If you cut costs for them, it's just more profit. And if you think that's a cynical way of looking at it, look at 2022 and 2023 and 2024, the release of D.R. Horton, KB Homes, Ryan, all these companies that made record profits. It wasn't because people were just willing to give them more money. It's because they could build a home for cheaper when people were willing to pay more. And they took advantage of that instead of lowering their prices. When prices went up because of the supply chain breakdown, you can look at the cost of softwood lumber and steel. You see the spike, and then it drops. And if you look at the median home price of new construction homes, you see the spike, and then it flatlines. It's a profit game. It's not a let's do good for the community. So if we started in some kind of structure taking investors out, I'll give my take. I have 2.
Yes,
I think number one, and they're both controversial. Both are wild. One, I think we get rid of single-family zoning. I think the rest of the builds that ever reach soil in America should not be single-family homes. We have enough. We have 146 million to our 350 so million in our country. Not every single person is going to buy. Birth rates already declined. Marriage rates already declined. People can't afford housing. So why are we building more single-family homes if we already know the boomer generation, the only people that can afford it, are slowly dying off in the silver tsunami, they call it? I think a lot of those homes are just going to get willed to kin, not hit the market. But regardless, we got enough single-family housing, multifamilies, more public transit hubs. Like, we need to create more normal homes for normal people. And the second one you already alluded to is the investment ladder. Now, I do agree we could kick investors out altogether, corporate buying altogether. An institutional investor own more than 50 homes, you shouldn't be able to buy any more altogether. But there's a lot more red tape and a lot more gray area and loopholes that can be taken advantage of. I think people would think of, and you know that. So I think if we attack them at the closing table, so there's a 2% fee if you're purchasing a property with plans to profit. Simple. Airbnb, rental, blah, blah, blah. I think flips maybe could have a slightly different structure because those actually do kind of help the housing market by bringing dilapidated back to life. Yeah. But if we were to say if you own more than 100 properties, you have to pay a higher fee, it's going to push people away from maybe buying a neighborhood in scale. It's going to push away certain people. And if you keep the rate low for people that only own like 1 to 5, then the mom and pop's not dead. The rental market doesn't go away. But we're simultaneously pushing away demand and adding to a fund that can support a first-time buyer. It's a money game. You already said it. It's a math game. They don't make enough money. They can't save enough money. So yeah, call it socialism, Marxism, Georgism, call it whatever ism you want. I got a little tism. And when I look at the whole situation, the pattern seems like we're going to walk through another 10 years of this exact problem, but worse. So we have to provide more money in some way. I don't care if you consider it socialism.
Yeah, and especially when it's around housing too. I just think it's just a core fundamental.
It's the cornerstone of the American dream. It's what we started marketing post-World War II. The American dream. Why? Because they wanted to have mortgages. They wanted to create more debt. But it's what it is.
Yeah. When you're talking about the multifamily, are you looking at it as multifamily for people to own units like townhomes and condos more than rentals, or just way more rentals, way more condos, townhomes for purchase with changing zoning up?
That's a good question. I think both could persist. Right now, a single family rental in a normal area, like if you go to Felton for a 4-bedroom rental, you're paying $2,700 a month. That rental market right now is just so overserved. We don't need more of that, in my opinion. So yeah, I think more in the rental side is definitely going to help. More starter rentals would help, because in Delaware specifically, when people hit me up like, I need an apartment, I'm like, we have under 1,000 apartments in all of Kent and Sussex County. So there's not a lot of opportunity there. Now, we are slowly building more, but yeah, I think fractional ownership has been a great gateway to wealth in crypto and stocks and bonds and other ventures. Like you can partially invest in the entire S&P 500 by holding an index fund. Index funds were largely made popular by Larry Fink. Love him or hate him, he's a pretty rich guy. So the index fund route is smart. I think we could bring that into housing. You could say build a quadplex and you're selling a unit, the same way you sell a condo, and maybe these are condos. But the world where you're expecting someone to either walk out of college and buy an $1,800 a month 2-bedroom apartment, or take on a $2,600 mortgage is a really whack scenario at the starting line. So maybe just improving the starting line.
Yeah, I agree. I think even hearing you talk about that too, I almost think that some of the solutions, just because of how our system works, and it might seem like naive of me to think that certain solutions will be implemented because this system has been like this for so many decades.
Because it would be the right thing to do. How dare you have empathy, my friend?
Yeah, if it's the right thing to do. But it's like,
honestly.
It's almost like we have to create solutions that's almost like a business presentation that will make people money, but in a way benefit people in this new way. Like if you were to do like some town where people could buy apartments and they were real cheap and there was public transit, like it couldn't be pitched as good for the people. It would have to be pitched as like some that's how sad we've gotten to this place where everything's got to be pitched as profit.
And it seems like a fight, right? Because anybody who's not a homeowner is like, drop the home prices. But then anybody who owns a home is like, F no. I don't want you to lower home prices. This is my wealth. This is all I got. This is like 80% of my net worth. I don't want home prices to drop. So I see both sides of the argument. I saw a really wild take. I want your take on this if you haven't heard it, that even better. What if for every property in America that is currently under a cash flow opportunity, again, Airbnb, long-term, short-term rental, 50% rise in property tax starting next year? You're going to create more money for your local economies and municipalities, maybe allowing you to drop infrastructural fees for more affordable building. And secondly, you're probably going to see an influx of supply of affordable housing.
Oh, because you're saying people would go, oh, I'm out?
Yeah, you're going to have some people say, and because of that reason, I'm out. I think it's a pretty solid idea, quite honestly.
Well, when you're thinking about it, because you're saying a 50% increase. So if you're spending $5,000 a year on property taxes, now it'd go up to $7,500.
Correct.
So it's like
It's not going to break the back of every investor on the planet for sure. It's not going to break
all of
everyone
that
back.
adds up. Or if that's one of the ways of, I'm really curious what Florida's going to do with this property tax that DeSantis has been talking about for 6 months now.
Has he talked about, because I haven't kept up with much of Florida other than all their bond purchases. Have you seen the, like, what they would supplement the money for, like, schools and roadways? Like, how would they get money?
I haven't gotten a clear answer, and because it just seems like speculation, even though I'd be excited to see what they were going to do, it just seems like it's just all kind of
I have seen
raw
in past,
right now.
it seems like a campaign strategy if you're in politics prior to a presidential run to make claims and push things that can kind of get you in a good light nationally before you make that run.
Yeah.
Could be it, because we see Gavin Newsom doing pretty much the same thing, Ted Cruz trying to do the same thing, failing at it. But the overarching belief that Florida is probably not going to get rid of property taxes, even though they're talking about it pretty heavily. What do you think that would do? Do you think that would help?
I always go to the numbers because I just like to see, because everything in theory sounds good, but then I try to say, well, how much would it be? I don't remember the math. I did it, but I remember looking at it. It was like billions. I'm like, how are you going to replace that? And you can't raise sales tax because people who don't own homes will get screwed. You can't raise sales tax.
Yeah.
So what would you really do? But it made me think of, oh, I wonder if they're gonna keep property tax for investment properties, and then is it like, would you raise property taxes?
If you were to double investment property, then you could supplement the person who actually lives there. I mean, we already do this for old heads. Old heads don't have to pay school tax. At least in Delaware. I think it's past 65, 63. Why are the people
so
that
the
already
property tax will go down?
Yeah. Why are the people that have already benefited from the system most having to pay the least in? Because the argument is they don't have kids, but they're the ones that are in the home they're in the state they're in, because of the educational system provided to them at one point already.
Yeah,
so
and you need
why
the whole
is the person with the
continue
kid
to
in
be
the school having to
educated.
pay the school tax? It should be the other way around. Why aren't we leveraging the people that have more money to help the people getting started? And that's just Delaware. I don't know what other states do there. I don't know.
And that's the thing with politics sometimes, and talking about it, it's so fucking complex, because even when it comes to older generations, you think about somebody who's got a lot of money, but then there's a lot of older people who need those discounts because they're just on Social Security or they've just got their house.
Yeah.
And it's just such a mess for us to govern federally, because there's just so many of us. That's why I love like the state ideas, because it seems more manageable, and we have an opportunity in the United States to try shit in different. Like if Florida pulls the property tax thing off, the country can learn from Florida what worked, what didn't, and then
I think Florida's kind of been the science experiment of our country for quite a few decades, so that fits.
It does. Yeah. It's
like, okay, no bath salts, got it. Keep away from any body of water when you're down there, got it. They'll eat your dog. They're eating the cats. When it comes to the future, I want to go back to this. You're saying, and I'm putting words in your mouth, so come back and clarify, that this is not a one fix solution. This ranges from housing market economics to basic getting by cost of living, and even intrudes into potential need for legislation and change at that level. And that if we don't do something, that we're probably going to see more of the same. You don't see home prices dropping. You don't see magically the wealth gap, shrinking. You kind of see more of the same without change.
I think it's I mean, because at the fundamental level,
and what's that fundamental level, just so everyone listening?
Of just how our country operates. The fundamentals, when you look at the past 50 years, and I've seen all of these economic policies and all of these changes that allowed the wealth to go to the top, it's continuing to multiply, and they've shown they don't give a fuck about the citizens. They look at us as voters, they look at us as consumers, and they don't see us as human beings, unfortunately. Like the system itself. Maybe there's some people within it that really care, but when we're trying to make these changes, it's a complete systematic change. Mm-hmm. So we're like, even with us, we're trying to create solutions, but it has to fit. Like the system has to be completely changed in order for these big ideas to even be implemented. Or there's going to be integration with AI where the capitalism and the system itself is going to change out of its own self-preservation, where they just go, oh shit, people don't have jobs and money anymore. Now we need to invest, not because they care, but because they need us to have disposable income to spend on their stuff, or for us to not revolt. Like, everything is about the preservation of capitalism, and our government is where it
But
seems
that point
like the
right
top
there is
work.
the exact reason why I don't understand today. If you're a business owner, like everyone listening should just put them in the seats of themselves in the seat of a business owner. If you have 15 employees, 3 upper management, and you're running some type of industrial company, whatever, factory, and you have so many spinning plates. You have to manage your insurance. You have to manage profit loss. You have to manage any legal disputes. You have to manage your actual landed product cost versus what you're wholesaling or retailing for. Are you a B2B company, B2C company? You have to protect your corporate veil. There's so many different things. You have to forecast your future gains versus scaled expenses. There's a lot to handle. But one of the core elements of running any business that's employee driven is the productivity of the employee. Otherwise, none of the other stuff matters. It doesn't matter if you have insurance. It doesn't matter if you have a good legal team. If the company's not making money and the producing people aren't producing at the rate you need, you're not going to have a sustainable business model. And if you kind of scale it out to our country, it seems like the very system running this country, is ignoring the foundational employee and ignoring that baseline factory worker that's creating the productivity. And that person is starting to look around like, okay, nothing's changing. This is still just happening. What are we going to actually do to change it? And you're right. You said the word social revolt. I don't think that's dramatic. I don't think that's dramatic at all. I think we're already seeing it in people's words and maybe not in specifically like actions like we saw in Nepal this past week. But we are seeing it in words. We are seeing it in sentiment. And it seems just like that the person who's creating the productivity that our country boasts about so often, the spine of our being the nation or the world's leading economy, is being ignored. And that person being ignored, maybe thanks to social media and other independent creators like yourself, are starting to understand that this is how it's always been. It's just a carrot on a string. And until we actually do something about it, you mentioned that, like the social revolt thing, that maybe nothing actually will change. Where labor unions and things used to fight for us, we see they're all bought too. Where politicians used to fight for us, we see they're bought too. It's like every direction you look, it's like it's money, it's power. Yeah,
It's
a little bit
it's
of
what
a,
it is, and also just to clarify too, which I think people understood what I meant by it. There's a peaceful way for us to revolt and protest it. If you really got millions of people to say we're not going to show up
You
anymore.
mentioned the number one option, in my opinion, a labor strike.
Yeah,
That you could
because
halt the gears of the entire machine, but the logistics behind it are crazy.
But it would take a certain number, and you know what's really fucked up is when you really think about it, it could happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you could get, I don't know what the number would be, but literally we have that much power.
Yeah.
And we just don't get together to do it. But when you mention those job numbers, though, this is why we need to continue to digitally protest and talk about this stuff, is because when you have 500 applications to these jobs and you're turning away 499, when your productivity is going up, or you can offshore the work, you can replace a worker with AI, you can bring in people from other countries and have immigrants come here who are going to be so happy to work these jobs. They've got just all the power right now because they have options of offshoring immigration and AI to replace the whiny millennial and Gen Z who doesn't want to work for $12 an hour after 27 years of being at the company. And I think that's the thing that I don't know. I just see all this, but I don't know how it plays out. It's a dance of who's gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't truly predict where we're going to be in 10 years specifically because of AI. I just don't know what this is going to create. But to tag it with the housing that you asked and the end of that question is, that's another thing I'm friggin' weary about. Like, I know all the stats, we've gone over them, of how many people own their house outright and how many people have interest rates lower than 4%. But how can the houses keep going up if people don't have money? Like, you're going to run out of middle-class people that can afford houses.
And we're seeing it in the new construction numbers right now. Anybody listening can look this up now. The Federal Reserve tracks not only total new construction units on the market, which actually for the first time in a while dropped, it dropped below 500K in total national inventory, but they also break it down in their phase. I found it really interesting because I saw it drop and immediately I'm like, okay, in which phase of new construction did it drop? And so I looked at not completed. Those are those floor plans, those CGI homes online they're using to market their homes.
Yeah.
Under construction and total completed. Those are the ones actively for sale. The total completed is going up, which I found interesting. So the total supply is going down, but the completed and awaiting a sale is going up. The and the total non-completed is staying about flat. They're not shifting their marketing strategy of they need to get as many listings out there pushing the homes that could be to get as many sales as possible. They're not slowing that down. But the thing that has slowed down and what's driving down that number is actually the number of under construction homes. That's the number that dropped the most, was the homes actively being built with hammer and nail. So that to me says a very clear story of homes are sitting, they're pushing harder to get people in the door, and the actual construction of their revenue model isn't happening as much. And it speaks to people just can't afford it. People can't afford it.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. I got to tell you, I always feel so weird because, but I just don't think young people should buy. A lot of young people shouldn't.
Say that again. I think that's a great take.
Yeah. It's just such a flip-flop, like what a whirlwind to be in 2021 and to see the numbers of 3% and these low things.
Yeah, yelling at people. It's not going to crash. Buy a house, please. Yes.
Yes. Like it's the smartest thing ever. And then when you're looking at it now, and I'm not even talking about a crash. Like, do I ever think the market's going to, anything's possible. Do I ever think it's going to drop 30, 40%?
Well, to your point, 39.7% of American households are mortgage free. Like 80% have an under 5% mortgage rate. What's going to force that person with an $1,100 payment to sell out of panic when they could just turn it around and rent it for $2,000 if all things came to blows?
Yep. Yeah, the ones feeling the pressure are the people from 2022 till now that bought, or the people who are looking now. And I just think it's important for people to know just the pros and cons, like the true pros and cons in the full picture of if you should be buying or if you should be renting. Like, I understand why someone who wants to be in a really good school district, you're starting a family, you want the yard and the bikes, and you make 150 or 200,000, and you can find a house for 350. You're probably going to be good. That's probably going to be comfortable. But when you actually pull out the numbers of how much a house is going to cost at even a 6% rate over 30 years, and you include property taxes, homeowners insurance, repairs, like even me, I've been in my house for 3 years. I've had to replace like toilet seats, light fixtures, doorknobs, pest control, like just little shit that you never thought of. It all adds up.
Adds up.
And what I'm encouraging people to do, though, however, and I want to try to get this thing like out there, is you're either going to go the homeowner route or you're going to go the renting plus investor route. You just don't want to be just a renter, because if you're never going to buy, you're going to be subject to whatever the fuck rent prices are in the future. And if you never invest, it's not going to work. So I'm trying to get this idea where it's like, think of yourself as a renter plus investor. If you can afford $2,000 a month in rent, try to find something for $1,800, and on the first of the month, put your $1,800 through for rent and the other $200 towards like an S&P 500 index fund or whatever investment you want to do.
Yes.
And line it up. So if you're going to go and rent in 3 years with your partner, you fall in love and you're going to rent, babe, we can afford $2,800. Why don't we do $2,400 and put that $400 because we're a renter plus investor. We're never just renters.
Yeah, and this is not an investment show. Please do not invest, buy, sell anything based off the words that me or Freddie say on this channel. But I hold gold. I hold crypto. I hold non-dollar dominant currencies and assets. Real estate is an asset. A collection of luxury watches is an asset. An old car that maintains and gains in value is an asset. And what you're saying is holding something while the monetary base inflates, which ultimately a lot of people believe. I wish I had you as a fly on the wall for yesterday's conversation. You'll have to check it out. We were talking about the future of the Fed. And we're walking through all the graphs together. And this guy's just a nerd of nerds. I love him to death. He just knows the numbers. And we're walking through all these graphs. He's like, dude, it's just mathematically clear and evident that it's either deep, dark recession or quantitative easing. There's no other way around it. We can't get rates down by simply cutting the Fed rate. I'll put this out here right now. They're probably going to cut the rate next week. I didn't believe when I watched the July Fed meeting it would happen, but then we have the job loss reports that came out that really shook the game up, and inflation stuck around this 2.7, 2.9 range. So it's probably going to happen. But what I think is going to happen, and what we have evidence of happening exactly this time last year, is that this time last year, when we knew rates were about to drop, you'll remember this, when the Fed started talking about a rate drop and we started seeing signs in the economy, okay, inflation was dropping, and unemployment was staying stable, but it's getting a little shakier, we're going to go ahead and cut rates. They went ahead and priced in the cut. The 10-year, 20-year, and 30-year bonds dropped to meet the expectation of the future Fed rate cut. And the Fed rate is just simply, and you know this, the overnight funding rate for banks. It's a range. He walked through the 5 different rates. It's a really good video, especially if you're an economy nerd. I won't get into the depths of it because even some of it makes me think, what? So he walked through it. And the only way that we can get rates dropped is by having the bond investors believe in our dollar and our economy. That's the only way 30-year rates drop. That's the only way car loans, credit card loans, any type of loan drops in interest rate. And what we saw last year is when we actually made the first cut in September for 50 basis points and went on to make 2 more quarter cuts for a whole 100 basis points, a full 1%, the 30-year went up. The day after that first cut, it started going up and didn't stop until we announced we were done cutting. I don't think that's a coincidence. And so when we make this next cut, it'll be very interesting what the next 3 weeks look like. It'll be very, very interesting what the next 3 weeks look like post. I personally believe we're going to see a repeat. And if we start seeing that again, and that's only happened, and he brought it up too, in the late 70s when we were fighting inflation, they brought the rates up. The bond market started going up too, and so they started cutting, and so the bond rates start going up, and so they had to bring them all the way back up to 19% to get it to cool down. And
damn,
it's very possible. Nobody's talking about it, but if that were to happen, that is a clear indicator, just as it was in '79, that we are in a economic hands-tied situation, where the consumer is going to have to face higher costs. Our debt for our country is not going to be able to be lower than what it is right now, which is $920 billion, I think it is. And if that's the case, both sides of our country get strangled by the fact that investors need a higher yield on the investment in the American debt because they don't believe in it. It's $38 trillion, the deficit's 7%, and our dollar's weakening. Why would they? Mm-hmm. It's a dire scenario, and I think we're going to start to see it unravel in this quarter. Not to be dire, not to be dark, but I think that is a clear economic, non-emotional, non-partisan way of statistically analyzing the current situation, the current economy. If the bond markets are going up while we're saying our rates should go down, that specifically speaks to we are doing what the economy isn't saying to do. We are ignoring the signals and doing whatever we want. And it worries me. It worries me. I try to be as unpartisan as possible. But, man, if Trump gets a chair in there in May that wants to drop it 300 basis points, that's doomsday-ish for the bond market. And a part of me wonders if that's the call, if that's the purpose. Because you talk about big systematic changes. One big systematic change that was a bigger overhaul than anything we've talked about, anything involving legislation or a home buyer tax for investors. What's even bigger is this thought of blockchaining every asset in America and transitioning our currency to a gold-backed crypto. You know, that's crazy. That's insane. That's insane. You know, AI built super cities. That's insane. I don't think what we're talking about is insane. I think ignoring it's insane. I think belittling, we talk about the women's voices that are ignored, but right now the kids' voices, the next generation, the people who were just babies in 2008 and just coming to light of adulthood in 2020 are now being told that this is normal and you're not working hard enough. And it's just insane to me, man.
Yeah. I even when you were saying all that, I just
I said all that because that definitely was a yap. Yeah.
No. I was like glued because I'm sitting here trying to think like what each of those scenarios would mean. How would you see I guess let's call it a depression. Like, what would that look? Do you even know what that would look like in today's world?
No, because I'm not an economist, but I think there's a couple economists I follow that have painted a pretty good picture. I think Ray Dalio's a really good one to look into. Is changing of the world order. A lot of the evidence kind of lines up with that. China on the uptick in pretty much every direction, from energy to military to education. And you type in AI, their deep seek AI. I think, what was that? Was that early this year, late last year, where they had a $5 million budget compared to our billions, and
Oh yeah.
right on par with us. It seems like we're falling out of power, and it's very historically clear that when that starts to happen, last one we saw was Britain, where people kind of flail. You flail around trying to keep your position of power, and it ends up in being overtaken because people can see weakness. People can see opportunity. And I think things like what happened yesterday and what may come through the fog of what happened is only making foreign entities lick their lips. It's only making BRICS, count their days because they see opportunity. How couldn't you see opportunity? And when they're having their own little private dictator party over there, meanwhile we're not invited, it seems like it's lining up to a kind of Ray Dalio-like effect where it's a full detethering. If our bond market falls apart, our dollar falls apart, the trust in the dollar falls apart, gold spikes, and businesses fall apart. Consumer spending falls down to its knees. And you get to this point where you have to print your way out of it. But in the specific, this detethering, and why I bring up the Fed rate as being so important, a big part of this detethering is the broken lever. In this detethering, the central bank loses control over monetary policy by managing the interest rate. And it's because if they were to drop the Fed rate to send signals of, okay, we need to create more credit, we need our banks to push around more money, meanwhile the foreign investor doesn't trust the entities doing it, it doesn't work. And all of a sudden the Fed rate's dropping and the overnight bank rate's dropping, but yet the bond rate for the normal everyday person's not. And now you have an even more wealth transfer situation where a bank can get a cheaper dollar than we can by a large amount. So you look at the SOFR, you look at the reverse repo, all these different accounts that get just as complex as they sound are all flashing red signals. So to me, it's either, and this is where in the last conversation with him is either a detethering from the dollar and from our currency and succumbing to the debt and being a emerging market style economy, or printing ourselves back into existence the same exact way we bailed out banks in 2008 while foreclosing families. We got rid of a free market in 2008, and he even agreed that we're just basically inflating a balloon that's going to pop. That pop could have happened from 2009 to 2012. But instead of allowing rates to remain high, we bought all the bonds. That's what QE is. We buy bonds because other people don't want to buy them. And we still hold them to this day because if we release them, we know no one would buy them. We know we wouldn't get enough purchases and rates would skyrocket. It's the same reason we hold residential mortgage-backed securities in the trillions. I think they have $6 trillion worth of our assets in their hands. And that's creating a pushed down, depressed price point on rates. So when we see these 6.5% rates, 6% rates, that's lower than what they should be because a large part of the supply isn't available. And if we are faced with another QE scenario, we're only going to take on more, $8 trillion, $10 trillion worth of those assets to keep the credit market open, to make easy money like we did from 2020 or 2012 all the way through 2023. And between this last decade, there's no other decade we can look at prior where there's been more wealth transfer, where there's been less asset allocation, where there's been more of a higher age bracket growing in their net worth while the rest suffer. We've never seen this. And it could all be stemmed back to the 2008 crash and Citizens United and all of the hoopla that goes on in the political field. But you can just draw down the money. Money was easy to borrow. Big people borrowed it. Little people borrowed debt. And the debt grew while their assets grew. Simple. Your debt is someone else's income. And those rates aren't going down just because we at the Fed say we want them to. It's a bond market decision. And I don't think the bond market, I think their jury is still out on what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting few weeks to say the least. And I don't think enough people are talking about the potential repercussions.
I agree, man. And I just think that for everybody too, just with all this, potential, like the speculation of which route this is all going to go, of just trying to lower that debt a little bit, save a little bit, cut the spending a little bit. Like I know that that's what we've been doing just in general, just like saving, just to kind of see what the next move is. I mean, we're still investing, but like I just want to be mobile during this next 10 years of like to see what's best for us and our country to move forward, especially for the average worker, because I don't want to see a depression, dude. I just don't know. It's not going to be like the crash in 2008 where us millennials, like, we kind of handled it in stride because things were so cheap. But now I just think it would be an absolute disaster.
I don't disagree. But the benefit of where we're at right now is, even if that were to happen, what you said earlier still rings true. The best way to prepare is holding an asset. The best way to prepare is holding something that is scarce. Sorry, my throat's all itchy. I think weather's starting to go down. I'm starting to get them fall allergies here.
Dude, I woke up this morning, same thing. I'm like, ugh. But we're powering through.
Yeah, we're powering through. Man, the powers that be are in power, and they're doing their power thing. And the middle class and working class seem to be screaming. I just hope we continue to. That's my
Yes.
biggest call to arm, is I just hope we don't stop yelling about it. I hope we don't stop yelling about the controversies and issues and holes and lies that we see from the bottom, even if we don't think our voice is heard. And the best part about it is there's still opportunity through ownership of assets. That's the best opportunity to grow with this inflating economy. There is still an opportunity. It's becoming slimmer. It's becoming harder. The maze is becoming darker and darker to walk through, it seems. You keep bumping your head into a wall. It's like those mirror mazes. You just keep bumping into things. You're like, oh, there it is. And you're like, bong, and you got to start over, concussed. Yeah. So, Fred, where can people follow you? How can people get in connection with you?
Yeah, just the big three. I mean, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I post there pretty regularly, other than the last 3 weeks where I took a little time off. But I'm posting again. I'm digging there. I'm doing the research, and I think our voices are being heard. I mean, Zach and I have been on the front line, and I feel the difference from 2.5 years ago when I posted my first video about the housing market, and I watched as everyone started jumping on from all different places, and we really are making a difference. There's tens of millions of people that now understand that our digital protesting is important, and that we have to continue to speak up about our struggles, because as work hard and speak up. Do it in tandem.
So work hard and speak up. Get that on a shirt.
Yeah,
brother, I'm going to pray us out. That was fantastic.
Let's do it, yeah.
Dear Lord, thank you for this time me and Freddie were able to spend with one another, and for the communication, allowing for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear it. I pray for Freddie on his journey, as he has some incredible announcements he'll be making in the future that will further the spread of this message. And I pray for the continued spread of yourself as we continue to fight the good fight in your name. I pray. Amen. Freddie, fantastic once again. Can't wait to have you back on.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you.